So I kind of am going to use myself to kind of give us a timeline about how technology has changed. This year I have a niece who entered kindergarten, so I thought about comparing the technology when I entered kindergarten and to what she is experiencing now. So a lot has changed in 20 years. I entered kindergarten in 1993. That sounds like a long time to me, but I know some people were probably in high school in 1993. So I'm going to show some of the changes between 1993 and today. This computer, this Apple computer came out in 1993. For the time, this was cutting edge. This was the hot new thing. But today we have the amazing MacBook Pro. This is the new one with the Retina display, and we have cameras, and it's light. You can carry it around. That thing was massive. In 1993, this is the IBM Simon. It's believed to be the first cell phone. It combines a phone and a fax machine and a PDA all in one. But nobody really had these things. What everybody had was the pager. This was the popular thing of the day. I remember one day in kindergarten, on my way out to the bus, I kind of swiped my mom's pager, and I was the coolest kid in school. So if this was cool in 1993, but today my niece knows how to operate my Galaxy S3. So these are the cell phones that most of us carry around today. These are more powerful than that first computer I showed you from 1993. So you can see things have changed drastically. But what about technology in the classroom? So I went to an inner city elementary school. We didn't have a lot of technology, so this may have been different for some of you. We had books on tape. So what happened was we had a book, the C. Jane Run and all of those kind of books, and then we had a tape version. So we would put the tape into the cassette player, and we would have our headphones, and the tape would play, and we would read along to the book. And we had overhead projectors. They would just put the clear film on the thing, and the light would come through, and we could see whatever our teacher was trying to show us. That's basically about it that I can remember from kindergarten. We didn't have a lot of technology in our schools. Like I said, the pager was the highlight. But my niece, she has access to the smart board. So you can see these kids are interacting with the board. They can touch it like a touchscreen device. They can write on it. They can do math on it. And there's programs that can tell them if they're correct or not once they do their addition or subtraction or whatever they're doing. They have much better projectors. They don't have to use the slide film, and they don't have to worry about screwing in the light or tilting the lens on the top. They have tablets in schools. Many school districts around the country are giving kids access to iPads. They can use these for reading. They can play math and science games. And just help them learn about technology. One of the things schools are really trying to increase in the curriculum is our soft skills, how to use technology, how to interact with different devices. But most kids already know how to operate those by the time they're 3 years old. So I think schools right now are kind of behind in that sense. They're trying to teach kids how to use an iPad in the 2nd grade when they already know before they can walk. And they have computer labs. The first computer lab I encountered was in the 6th grade. I remember when I was in the 3rd grade when we got our first computer in the library, we were just so excited that we could look up books and we didn't have to use the Dewey Decimal System anymore. So this is kind of where technology is today. So is this a good thing? Well, that depends. The plus side of it is that kids go to school and they're enthusiastic about what they're going to be learning. They're excited that they go to school and they get to play with all of these devices. The problem is reading and math scores across the country are stagnant. They haven't changed in the last 10 years, and in some cases, their reading scores are actually going down. And there's no hard data that shows that technology in the classroom improves learning. So what do? The government is spending millions and millions of dollars on technology, but there's no real proof that it's doing anything to help our kids. So should we take all technology out of the classrooms since it's not working, let's save that money and put it towards the deficit?
Yes.
I like that. Or should we stop adding technology to classes that don't have them and then collect data from the ones that do? Well, the problem with this is, what if we find that over time technology really does help these kids learn? It would give them a huge advantage. But what about the kids who we didn't give the technology to? We gave one set of kids an advantage and we kind of took that away from the other set of kids. So how can we justify possibly depriving kids of something that could help them excel later? Or we can just keep adding technology to the classroom. Is the reward of improved learning better than the risk or the cost? This is something that I don't know. My opinion is that we just keep adding technology to classrooms. My thought is that if kids are enthusiastic about learning, they're going to want to go to school, they're going to want to learn, and once they want to learn, they're more likely to take in the information. There's no scientific data, that's just my opinion about that. So where is technology in the classroom going? I believe we're going to see more immersive technology, so using virtual reality. As an example, if in your 3rd grade social studies class you're studying rainforest or the Navajo Indians, you could use some kind of virtual reality system to actually put you in that space so you can look around and see the Native Americans in their habitat. You can see the kind of tents they lived in. Or smart classrooms where you can have devices that can detect engagement in the classroom. It can tell if you, the teacher, are boring the students to sleep.
Yes.
Maybe the classroom could alert you and tell you, hey, you need to change what you're doing because the kids are falling asleep. Or it can detect disturbances in the classrooms. Or teleteaching and telelearning. So there are many countries in the world where kids have to travel miles and go through, cross rivers and mountains and bridges just to get to a classroom. But even though the internet connectivity isn't where we want it to be, every country doesn't have it. It's growing. More countries have access to cell phone communication, and the internet towers are going up in more countries. So what if we can have this kid who has access to the internet, maybe they can use a laptop to connect to that school that's 15 miles away instead of them having to walk and cross mountains and rivers and bridges to get to school every day. Well, what do the experts say? So Scott Benson, a program officer at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, says the main shift is away from what I'll call a teacher in classroom centric model. So he believes that classrooms are going to get to the point where a teacher is not in the front lecturing, but they're more facilitating the learning. They're walking around monitoring. So kids would have access to software that could teach them on their level. They'll be able to go at their own pace. So the kids who are struggling would have a different learning system than the kids who are advanced and going way beyond their grade level. So the teacher would go around and they could monitor everyone's progress. They could help the students who are struggling, while the kids who are advanced, they could just go straight through the lessons at their own pace. I don't know how I feel about this, but I'll let you guys chime in at the end. Jay Chakrapani, I think that's how you say that, of McGraw-Hill, they make textbooks. Well, they publish textbooks. He says collecting data and having a student profile that goes from kindergarten through professional life is where we want to invest.
That's both wild.
So he believes that once you have that adaptive system, once you're in kindergarten, that changes depending on how you learn and how fast you learn. That system stays with you until you graduate. So once you're in college, that same system that helped you learn your alphabet is still helping you learn physics and science based on what it learned about you in kindergarten. And after you graduate, that system stays with you. So now you're on your job and you have to learn maybe office politics or something like that, or how to navigate the social scene, or teaching you how to drive or how to cook. This system stays with you and teaches you things that you need to know based on how you learn them best. That's where he thinks education is going. These quotes can be found in this article, The Future of the Classroom, on CNN Money, and I put the link here just in case you guys want to jot it down or go check it out later. But thank you. This is the end of my talk, so I just want to open up for a discussion. Like I said, I don't believe that moving away from a teacher-centered classroom is the best thing for children. An email went out yesterday across the HCC list, I don't know how many of you got it, about e-learning is not as effective for minority students. So if we move away from a teacher-centered classroom where the teacher is standing in front of the class teaching, how will that affect those minority students who need the interaction with their teacher, that kind of I tell you something and you learn from me? How will they manage in this kind of system? Will they be left behind because they don't have the interaction that they need? Or what about the kids who are advanced? Are they just going to whiz through the first grade in the first 3 weeks? Because I know when I went to kindergarten, my mom put an emphasis on reading every day. We had a time when we had to read books or we had to write something. So I went to kindergarten and I knew how to read. And I was always in trouble because I was bored or telling the kids the answer when the teacher would ask, what letter is this? I just blurted out because I knew when they were taking too long to answer. But if I had a system where I learned at my own pace, would I have kept up with my class, or would I have just gone ahead? Would I have learned the same, or would I have just thought, oh, I know this, and skipped it and gone on? There's research that says being a part of a cohort is important for kids, so how would that affect the cohort? So if I'm in the first grade, but I'm on material that's for third graders, how would that affect me socially when I'm not at the same place with the kids in my cohort? So I just think that maybe that's moving in the wrong direction, but I'll open it up to you guys to tell your opinions. Yes.
When I was in elementary school, we had books that were associated with the grade level. I assume everyone, they still do that. But like in the middle of the table, there would be an array of the books for each individual grade level, and Shelby knew what number book he was supposed to read. I knew what number book I was supposed to read. So during reading time, if I was on the third grade reading level, then I would just pick up the book with 3, where he might pick up with 1. So it was kind of like that, I guess. Wasn't all technology integrated, but it was kind of like that. And then when we got to the third grade, there was one girl in our class who, I don't know, I guess she was the only super smart person in our grade level, but she was doing math and reading 2 grade levels ahead. And so whenever we would do math during class, she would leave and go to someone else's class, the higher grade level, and then she would come back. And it was just weird because it's like she just would be missing for 2.5 hours out of the day. And as kids, in third grade, it's like, oh, why is Leslie so special? How come she gets to leave and go do this? So just thinking about how that can affect the social dynamic. And I'm trying to think, like, did she really have friends? And I mean, she did, but she had friends, but she still was kind of like that. Outsider. She was still outsider.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I think that you bring up some interesting issues about the role that technology can play in the classroom. And I think where the direction of some of the research is going in this area is not just making, it's definitely more teacher-centered model is not the model of the day, period, in K through 12 anymore. It's more learner-centered, where students, where you're focusing on small group activities and things that actually cater to the students' interest and skill level. And so that idea of the reading books in the middle of the classroom, that's what these technologies offer, is that you still stay part of your cohort socially, but you're still able to kind of advance academically on your own terms. So I think I just want to kind of err on the side of the positive aspect of technology. And but you're right, the research shows that, technology isn't the end all be all. There still needs to be a teacher there. There still needs to be someone that's an older adult that's actually facilitating learning and, spotting where people have errors, and issues that need to be solved. So I think, technology needs to be a system in the classroom,
right.
Part of a system.
And then you have
It was kind of along the same lines.
I got interesting. These are not really questions, but I guess discussion points. Because you said a way to help those people who have to cross like rivers and bridges to get to school. I know people in a lot of different countries outside of Jamaica who has to, and including Jamaica, who has to cross rivers and bridges to go to school. But a lot of those people is because of poverty. That's why they have to do that are because of lack of development. So most of those kids who have to do that, they don't have access to a laptop. In the United States, it's totally different. Most people have access to technology from a very, very young age. And even if I go back and compare to say, when you were in grade 3, you had these recordings and all these things. We didn't have that. I didn't have that in school. When I was in grade 3, I didn't use computers till high school. You know, I didn't get my computer till high school. But it's just different for different countries. You know.
That is true. But the technology and the data is showing that cell phone usage is very pervasive. I think that's the right word I want to use. Thank you. In places that you wouldn't think they have cell phone connectivity, they do. In the middle of a village in sub-Saharan Africa, where they don't have running water in their homes, they're able to use cell phones. So, like I said, it's not where we want it to be. The internet isn't everywhere like we think it should be, but it's really growing, and I think maybe, this is just me throwing it out there, maybe in the next 10 years, almost everybody,
catch up.
Everybody can catch, because it's so widespread now. Almost everybody has access to at least 2G or 3G, so maybe wireless is gonna catch up.
And I guess it's different too, because people, even in like third world countries, will go for a cell phone real quick that have internet connectivity even before they get a laptop.
That's true.
And just to add to that, I think culture is very important as to how people learn in their day-to-day lives, because I know where I come from, there's always somebody teaching you. You don't just learn something, from reading per se. You come to class, or your mother sits you and shows you how to cook, or your grandfather tells you what to do. You know what I mean? So just, I guess culture plays a big role in that, and for certain countries it would take a lot longer. I mean, nowadays, like in Jordan where I live, to this day we can't get internet connectivity at my home for some reason, although like other places around can get it, but for some reason the area where my house is, you can't get internet. And so, there are a lot of challenges as to how to implement things like this in countries that don't have that.
Right.
To benefit everybody.
Right.
Or at least,
That is changing drastically. There's been a huge movement on ICT for D, which is information and computing technology for development. And so there's been a lot of movement. So you have a lot of kids in developing communities that do have access to computing. I was part of a team a few years ago that we were deployed out with the computers to remote villages to train the teachers. And what we had to do, and it's back to that user-centered approach, we trained the teachers to basically do the hookup where someone from like the main central hub in the city can do the lectures, or not lectures per se, but kind of set things up, and then the teachers work with the kids locally. So that is a drastic change.
I think it's interesting in one of your earlier slides, we kind of looked at the comparison between like when the old computers in '93, we looked at it like amazing, and now, well, I guess we look at the technology now, it's way more amazing than then. But I think for children who are growing up in this time period, like the Macs and the iPad, it's the norm for them.
I lived in a world where everybody didn't have internet connectivity, but my niece is living in a world where there has always been the iPod. Like, do you remember when you first heard about the iPod? I remember debating a boy down on the bus that there was a such thing as MP4, and he called me a liar. So like, I remember when these things were new. I remember like when the cell phone came out and all these things. But the kids today, they've never lived in a world without these things. So, in 5 years, my niece is gonna say, "Remember you had that old phone that I used to play with?" Ha 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 ha. Right. So I think it's gonna change drastically, and I think technology in general, and especially in the classroom, is going places where none of us can really imagine right now. Who could have imagined in 1993 that you'd be able to watch videos on a computer that was this big?
Star Trek.
Yeah, Star Trek. So I think it's going places where we can't even fathom right now. I think I'm over my time, but thank you guys for listening.